Paddy, thanks so much for having us round to the gym, to the house. Everything under one roof here. You've recently, I mean, it's something that we've talked about briefly, but you've recently worked on a book, Hats, Hand Wraps and Headaches. Why was the time now to do a book?
It wasn't my idea. It was Teach trains here. He's been training here for around 3 years. And he came up to me and says, I'd like to write a book. And I said, cool. And then he said, I'd like to write on your time in boxing. So that was it. It was kind of his project. He did it all. He wrote it all. He got the publishers on board. And I just was along for the ride.
What do you hope that people get something out of the book other than entertainment? Is there sort of anything in there that you particularly want people to take from it?
I think maybe when we started the book, we didn't know what we were writing. So he would just come around. We'd have a bit of poutine or a few Guinness and sit at the table in there, eat some food and chat. And he'd record it. And then we chatted about anything he asked questions on. But then that started leading into things. He might ask something that happened at a certain time, and then that led into something else. So then it got into a couple of points of let's say, mental turmoil that I've been through. And at the end of the book, I think that was something that would probably worthwhile come from it, that anyone that's going through something, that there's a way out.
I was going to ask, you know, some people say going through their story is cathartic or therapeutic. Is that how you found it at all?
Was it therapeutic? I had 2 bad years leading into New Year's this year. So I had 2 years of going through some demons. So that was happening as we were writing the book, because we had kind of finished it by the new year. Now, I don't know whether that was kind of coincided with the book because the book was bringing it up, or I don't know if I was just going through stuff and the timing of the book being wrote then just happened. I'm not sure.
Was there anything that you were surprised about that happened in the past that the book triggered a certain type of emotion, whether it was sadness, anger, happiness?
I wasn't surprised by any of it.
No?
No.
Because you know, a boxing terminology is a Rocky thing. Rocky talks about having something in the basement, and obviously when you start to bring forward these stories and talking about old people who might no longer be here or different things, sometimes these things are triggers, aren't they? In your emotions, whether it's overwhelming happiness or sadness or one thing or another. So there was nothing out there that really sort of sparked something where you thought, oh God, put that away.
Yeah, it triggered stuff, but I wasn't then surprised at what it would trigger, at what any of those given points would trigger. That didn't surprise me.
With the start of the book, you talk very on about struggles with mental health and issues that you faced growing up. I mean, touch upon them for us, because you are obviously now come across as someone who's got his head screwed on, who's a philosopher, who's open to different schools of thoughts and different ways of thinking. And back then, obviously, mental health, we talk about it freely now, but it was a bit of a taboo subject, wasn't it?
I think people are only talking about it in the last few years, isn't they? It depends. I didn't talk about it even to my wife. This last one I went through was 2 years long. And for the first year, I didn't speak to anyone at all about it because, you know, in my head, maybe old-fashioned, but we're there to look after the women, aren't we? Then after around a year or so, a year and a bit, I said it to my sister. And then a couple of months after that, I said it to the wife. That's how that one went.
And was there anything that set that off, or was it just a matter of feeling down, or what?
No, it's not. See, I think when people talk about mental health, automatically they think about it as being depression. And it's not all about depression. Mine would be torment. When I get to the stage, you could mention anything and then my head will set off this movie and it'll start playing out. And then everything that is wrong with what's going on at any given time with either some of my youth or what's going on in the world, that'll play out like a movie continuously, all day, all day.
When did you first start to feel down? Like I said, I don't want to dwell on this early bit, but it did take me by surprise how soon into the book you were in trouble.
Yeah, but the book wasn't wrote chronologically.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
No, easy for you to say, I couldn't say it. It wasn't written that way. The book was just, we would sit down, start chatting, and then it was teachers writing that
structuring
put
and
things
stuff,
in,
yeah.
and that wasn't the way it kind of played out. We started talking about how I got into boxing, the amateurs and so on, and then it just kind of gradually, he would change direction depending on what he felt.
Sure. What did bring you into boxing?
I just loved it. I loved it from I was real young, and I asked my man, Dad, was there anyone else out of the family that used to box? I don't think there was. I just really enjoyed it. And me and my dad would listen to a bit on the radio, and then when Barry McGuigan was fighting, the whole of Ireland stopped to watch. And yeah, I just always loved it. Don't know why.
Where were you brought up?
Just in Clare, just outside Limerick City. So I'm on the border of Limerick City. It's like 10-minute drive.
And what did your parents do?
My dad's a carpenter. He used to teach kids that were struggling with mental illnesses and so on, and physical illnesses. And my mum was a mother. Okay. Yeah, she'd look after kids.
Did you spend your youth on the straight and narrow?
You know.
So.
Yeah, we waver a bit, don't we? We waver a bit.
Where did you start boxing over in Ireland, or was it only when you came
in
here?
Ireland, St. Francis.
Okay.
St. Francis, my favourite boxing gym in Limerick.
Okay. And how many amateur fights did you have?
I don't know, more than a handful. I was in the Limerick Championships and the Munster Championships, and that I had around. So I don't know many fights.
When you talk about your pro career in the book, it's laced with regret in the sense that you felt that you were pro and you shouldn't have gone pro. You were distracted. You had loads going on, and you certainly weren't living the life.
No, well, I wasn't living the life, and that's what led into me going back down to the pro gym. It was just by chance, you know. I fell out with a dude who was a pro, and then somebody said, go down to the gym. So I went down to the gym. So then I kind of fell into it. Yeah. But what I should have done is thought, okay, I want to get back into this, and gotten back into the amateurs and got a couple of years and got my mental confidence in that back. I didn't. I just kind of went with it.
So what did you want to get out of turning pro? What was the point? Was it?
It didn't. I had just gone to the pro gym. So then when I started training, it was just like, well, I'm in a pro gym, I'll go pro. But it wasn't okay. I planned to get back into this.
Yeah, sure. Did your social circles change?
Yeah, you do, because you just I trained, religiously, and got up, ran, went to work, came home, went to the gym, came home, went to bed. So I was just hanging out with a buddy of mine, Nick Guyami. He was a pro down here. He's from Manchester. Me and him used to kick it everywhere.
Yeah. What kind of work were you doing at the time?
I was doing door security on pubs and bits and pieces.
How come your debut was up in Scotland?
No idea. I was just told. That's what I'm saying. I was just like, you're fighting. When? I think it was in a week or so. Okay.
So you had that debut in Scotland. That was to Gordon Blair. Boxing News said, this was interesting actually, Boxing News said you were on the receiving end of some heavy punishment, but they also said you were an Englishman. What was the most hurtful bit to read?
They were lying on both of them. Yeah, I was on the end of heavy punishment. Do you know what? Every trick and game that you would use, or I would use later on in boxing, they were all pulled on me there that night. I got the phone call, you got to be down the venue at I think it was 5:30. I said, okay. Get down to the venue 5:30. I had my hand wraps and I was in my shorts by 6. I didn't go on till 10:30. They put me in a changing room down there and they said, you're down there on the left. I was the only dude in this changing room. I just sat there all night on my own. Then they'd come in and go, you're on next. I got up and get warm. And they wouldn't come back. I think, where'd they gone? They'd come in an hour later going, you're on next. So I got up. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Second fight, I've been through all these. There's some good stuff in there.
Oh, you're going to really dig, aren't you? This is why I covered it in the book by saying when you're shite, you're shite. You know, how much detail do you want to go into?
So so Boxing News said your second fight was a disappointing affair. That was with Kid Sylvester. When you were a young pro setting out, does it hurt to read stuff like that?
Of course it is, because your ego gets in the way. Kid Sylvester was a strange one. We used to train together. Still, even at that point, and I went down to train, and I went up into the gym, and there was no one in the gym, and I heard the car horn beep. I look out the window, and my trainer's in the car going, "Come on down." So I came down. I goes, "What's going on?" He goes, "Oh, jump in the car." He said, "You're fighting tonight." And I was like, it wasn't like, "Do you want to?" It was like, "You're fighting tonight." I was like, "Okay." So we got in the car. I started driving, and we picked up Kid Sylvester. And I says, "You fighting?" He goes, "Yeah." That was it. I had no idea who I was fighting. Then when we got to the venue, I said, "You're going to wrap my hands?" He goes, "Don't worry about that. Just put on your hand wraps." So I'm putting on my hand wraps. And then the dude came in and he goes, "All right, time to walk." And then he goes, "Right, kid, you walk that way. You walk this one." I'm like, "I'm fighting, kid." So it was a bit of a head mess. Not that I'd have won anyway.
Third fight, Derek Daniel. Boxing News called you the Swindon beanpole.
I tell you what, you are loving digging this up, ain't you, man? Well, I was the same height I am now, and I was like 10 stone, so it was a decent enough description.
I thought that was brilliant.
I'm going to find some stuff out about you, you know that?
So, yeah, there's probably plenty out there.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Boxing News said you had a dream start against Trevor Royal in your fourth fight, and you floored him, and things were going well, but then he turned the tables.
Yeah, I lost half a stone the day of the fight. My trainer knew I was going to struggle at this weight. So one of the border control dudes at the time, he was a bit old, and he was kind of dithering around, and he gets the weighing scale, my trainer, and he puts it on top of the table. He said, "Let me put it up here for you to help you." So the old dude was just like, so he didn't have to bend down too much, and he had my elbow, and he was like, "There you go." And he goes, "See," I got off the scale, but yeah, listen. Is what it is.
And then you fought Royale again in a rematch. They said, Boxing News said you fizzled out, and that was because you started quick again, I guess thinking that you had success early against him the previous time, and then it just didn't work out.
That was one of the times when that triggered a bad time for me, because I quit. I didn't fizzle. I quit. I didn't even...
In that fight?
Yeah, I didn't want to be there on the night. Didn't want to be there at all. And it wasn't until the split second after I did, I was like, "Oh, fuck.
You can't get that back.
Yeah.
So that was you done 0-5, but loads of lessons learned along the way.
Everything's a lesson, isn't it?
Should be. Should be.
And we learn...
It depends on how you absorb it, I guess.
If some things aren't a lesson when they're happening, but they become a lesson later on, don't they? When you think back on them. Like there's lots of things now, the small sayings that your mum or your dad or your granny might say, and at the time they're saying them, and you just think, yeah, whatever. And now I'm sitting down going, oh, I get it. So, you know, I've sat down and had plenty of I get it moments.
When you called it, did you call it a day after that in 1990?
Yeah, man, I went bad then.
In what way? Like fell out? I guess you quit the gym.
Yeah.
And flew off the rails.
Yeah.
How long was that period? How long was that deep? How long was that darkness?
Until, well, it wasn't even darkness. I was just gone. Until 96.
So about 6 years of a downward spiral. Mm-hmm. Were there times where you didn't think you were going to emerge from that spiral?
Didn't give it that much thought. Didn't give a damn. Didn't give it that much thought. Didn't care.
Were you back on the doors?
I had my own firm then, around 16 guys working for me.
Down here in Swindon? At what point did you go from Gavin Fitzpatrick to Paddy?
When I was 15, when I left home.
Okay.
It was my dad's name. So when I left home, I just took it.
But you fought under the name of Gavin?
That's just because the Border Control put down your Christian name.
Could you not, or did you not challenge that?
No, you know, Sniper I was managing, Sam Smith, and he wanted to, what was it? He wanted to change it to something, and the Board of Control wouldn't let it.
Okay.
Oh no, they wouldn't let him have Sam. He had to have Samuel.
Okay.
And he goes, why can't I have Sam? They wouldn't let him. I mean, so a little low onto themselves. Again, I didn't care. I didn't put no thought into it.
Yeah, yeah. Why did you not go back? You just happy? You happy being Paddy?
I chose to be called Paddy when I left home because he was my best example.
Yeah.
So I just thought, I wasn't going to take my mum's name. I'd have been called Mary. So I took his name instead.
So tell me, you got your big opportunity when you wound up in Jersey, or a big break, really. And it's something I've spoken about with Glenn Catley. We touched upon it when I spoke to Glenn. So Glenn would go over and spar with Stevie Collins. And so Steve Collins was over there training with Freddie Roach. What were you doing in Jersey?
I had split up from my first wife in '96. And it was, you know, I just wasn't going to carry on living the way I was living. So I left, went to Jersey, and met Freddie there. Why
Jersey? What was it?
I had been there in '91. I left home 15 and just kept traveling. I went everywhere. I've been all around Europe and everywhere, just traveling. So when I left here in '91, I went over there then. So I knew people there, and I just thought I'll pop back.
And then, so tell me about how you get to the gym with Freddie. Are you going in there because you're an ex-fighter and you're going to learn, or did you just hear that Freddie and Steve Collins were there, or what was that?
We had mutual friends. I had friends out there, and they knew Freddie. And we were in the gym. Me and my buddy was in the gym, and I was actually training him on the mitts one day, and then Freddie came in, and then he introduced me to Freddie, and we got chatting. And then Freddie invited me up to watch Steve train, and it just kind of went from there.
What did you make of Steve as a fighter?
To me, he's definitely my favourite all-time Irish guy. He could do everything, couldn't he? There wasn't one thing that you'd stand out, let's say, but he could counterpunch. He could stand and go to war. He understood the psychology of it. He had a great chin. He was always in great shape.
Could punch.
I mean,
could do it all, yeah.
There wasn't anything that he wasn't able to do. He had good ring generalship. I mean, he used to be a counterpuncher, didn't he, early on? And then we remember him with the wars that he had back here, but yeah, I liked him as a fighter.
So did you and Freddie hit it off from the start? I mean, Freddie doesn't rub many people up the wrong way.
We got on from the start, like you said. He's pretty easy to get along with, isn't he?
Yeah, but he wasn't the Freddie that we know now. He wasn't the big name, although obviously he'd done a lot of work. He'd been a good pro. He'd obviously trained under Eddie Futch himself, and he'd had, by then, I'm guessing he would have had Marlon Starling and Virgil Hill.
Marlon Starling and Virgil by then, yeah.
But he was still, you know, comparatively early on in his journey.
97. I mean, he had still worked with a lot of world champions right now, but I think everyone is in the light a lot more as the years go by, don't they, with technology and everything else. So people get to know people behind fighters a lot more now than they would have years ago. But I mean, he was still a hugely respected coach back then, wasn't he?
I did like this line in the book. It said, you know, someone can turn on 10,000 light bulbs by pressing one switch. Was that kind of what Freddie did with you?
No, but he did give me a chance that I wouldn't have got anywhere else, and it was probably my last chance at getting my head right. Yeah. No, that thing that I said is just something that I'm always saying to my youth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have going on. It's a switch that does it, and that's a mental thing. So, you know, you see fighters all the time that can fight their ass off in the gym, but they can't do fight night. It's not because they can't fight, and it's not because there's a crowd there, because the crowd aren't in the ring, but it's psychologically what doing it on a given night at a given time and so on can do to somebody. So, you know, everything comes from a switch.
Is that coachable, to coach someone around that? If they have that, not even deer in the headlights, but if they can't switch it on a fight night, if they're just not that way inclined, is it coachable to get that, to bring it out of them?
I think so. I think everything is coachable. It just mental and emotional, especially when you tie emotion to it. As soon as there's emotion involved, that's a lot harder to coach, because when an emotion in anyone is a negative one, you try to avoid it. I mean, it could be a technical reason that you're getting hit in the teeth. You still be prepared to, okay, what have I got to do? And go out and do it. What have I got to do? And go out and keep doing it until you get it right to correct that mistake. But when it's an emotional one, there's not a lot of people who want to go there all the time. And there's not a lot of people actually want to admit that there's something wrong there. But you do see guys that are emotional fighters, like Brewster T in camp for the first Klitschko fight. That was an emotional roller coaster. How many times do you see the all-time great cornerman is not because of any fantastic thing they said or direction that they gave, but it's just something they said to bring, like when Sugar Ray was told, "You're blowing it, son," against Tommy Hearns. You know, "You're blowing it, son." That was enough for him to stand up round 14, shake it up and go to work.
It's not tactical advice, is it? It's not tactical advice,
No, but it's exactly what he had to hear at that time. Yeah. Why else was he going to go out and do anything different? But you see him stand up, shake it all out, and then go to work. It wasn't that he started loading up. He went back to his box and he was told the right thing at the right time.
So Freddie basically said, "Come on out," and you thought, yeah, I'll come on out, fine. And you didn't necessarily believe it was a legit offer, as in that you thought it was an open offer, but that was it. But he actually did mean it. So he arranged some transport for you to get out there.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that I necessarily didn't believe it. I was just, surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if I got to the airport and it wasn't true. Yeah. So it wasn't that I didn't believe it. Yeah. I just wouldn't be surprised if I got there and went, "Oh, okay, April Fool." Like I got out here. Yeah. But I wasn't. It was the day after Steve fought Frederick Sellier. And he said, "Just meet me at the airport." And I met him there and he had a ticket bought and paid for, and yeah.
When you got to LA, did you like it straight away?
Yeah, man, I just love traveling anyway, so it was somewhere new. Yeah.
And tell me about early days at the Wild Card.
Early days at the Wild Card, that was my, I had the biggest 4-poster bed in Hollywood. I used to sleep in the ring. And don't forget, everyone didn't have a cell phone and there wasn't the internet until 97, as far as you know.
There was no boxing stuff going on all the time. And all the rest of it.
So I might call home now and again, but I wrote, because you wasn't using email and that, so I wrote. Told me I had the biggest 4-poster bed in Hollywood. I never told her what that meant. But it meant I was sleeping in a ring where in the daytime it was full of snot and blood, and then you'd clean it up and go to bed.
Was the Vagabond Hotel and that motel, was that next door at the time?
The Vagabond?
Yeah.
No, downstairs was laundromat underneath.
Yeah.
And as you're driving in on the left, that was called Three of Spades. It was a nightclub.
Oh, so that became a Vagabond then?
Oh, okay. Well, it was the Three of Spades back when I was there.
Good stuff. Tell me about some wild card wars that you would have seen back in the day.
You'd see them all the time. I mean, who do you want to know about? I mean, we had these two Mexican dudes, Angel Mata and Toluco, and they lived in the same house, managed by the same dude, and they used to try and kill each other every day. And like, I'd have one of them in the corner, Freddie, the other one, he'd look across him and go, these dudes are killing each other. And then and one day, Toluco hit Angel a split second on the bell. So then Angel turns around and drops Toluco by nailing him in the balls. And Toluco's on the floor and he's just swearing at him in Spanish. And after 1 minute, Toluco was back up and they were going to war again. They'd finish and they'd go out the door, arms around each other. They were cool.
You go to were you at any of the James Toney, Danny Green sparring?
No, Danny Green wasn't there when I was there, no. No, when I was there, James was weighing 240, and they were talking about James against Larry Holmes at the time. Okay. He had just fought Craig Tazzy in 97, and that was at light heavyweight, and he didn't make the weight on that. Then he moved up straight to heavyweight.
What was your first encounter with James like?
It was on the phone. It was on the phone. That you've been to Wild Card, right? So you know when you go through the door, and then it's just on the left is the little
the booth,
the booth, and then it's a
shop,
tiny little
store covered,
yeah, tiny. And so the phone rang, and I answered it, and I'm going Wild Card, and this dude goes, "Put Freddie Roach on." I'm like, "Yeah, who's speaking, please?" He went, "Motherfucker, don't ask who's speaking. Put Freddie Roach on." And I'm going, "Oh, okay." So I hung up, and then Freddie was like leaning against the counter like this, and he goes, "Who's that?" I goes, "I ain't got anyone." He carries on watching the sparring. Phone rang again. I answered, I goes, Wildcard, and he goes, motherfucker. He said, put Freddie Roach on the phone. I goes, oh, it's you again? He goes, yeah. I goes, who is it? He goes, you don't need to know. I goes, you going to tell me who it is or not? He goes, no. I goes, all right. So I hung up again. And Freddie goes, that same dude? I went, yeah. So then the phone rang again. And I answered it, and I thought, is this you again? He went, motherfucker. He said, I'm James Toney. He said, I want to come up there and put a cap in your ass. And Freddie heard James Toney, and he went, oh, no, give it. And he was, James, don't worry about it. He goes, that's what they like in Europe. They ask whose phone. That was the first time I spoke to James.
You ended up getting on well with James, though?
Cool as hell, yeah. Yeah, James is cool, man. Just when he's in the gym, everyone, if they even look in and around his weight, he gives it to them, you know, if not in the ring, just verbally. Who
were some of the better guys you've seen him in with, sparring-wise?
He used to spar with Brewster all the time.
As in Lamon Brewster?
Yeah, he sparred. Do you know what? Remember the names? I don't know, because we had at the time, so there was Brewster, Yokizan Nishijima, Don Diego Poder from Amsterdam, and just a list of anyone that came through that door. If they came through the door and they looked down James's weight, James would go, Freddie, put that dude in the ring. He just sparred everyone. So
tell me about how the work came about with Glenn Catley, because did you do some stuff with him going into the Neville Brown fight?
Yeah. He wanted Fred to train him for the Neville Brown fight. Fred couldn't make it over like he used to with Steve. He was just too busy. Yeah. So Freddie goes, look, I can send Paddy over there and work with you. See how you get on. And we went over and we got on great. We had 6 weeks together. And then in his last spar, a dude rolled under a shot and came up, just bad luck with his head. And Glenn had his back to me at the time. And then Glenn just turned around. I think my face said it all. I was like, oh. And he just picked up a bad cut, man. He was supposed to be fighting. It was November 97. He was supposed to fight Neville. And I don't think they fought till when he got cut, you know, that was it. He was down. He wasn't training for a while. The fight wasn't going to be rescheduled in the new year. I went back to LA.
And then how did you meet Laila Ali?
I used to train her ex-husband, Johnny McLean, Yaya, when I was with Freddie. He was with Freddie. And then he got hold of me around 2000 or so, and he said, I'm up here in Vegas. Will you come up and start working with Laila? So I just went up. I just thought I would move to Vegas.
So what did they do? So you moved to Vegas to work with her? Mm. Oh, okay, I didn't realise that. So when you were in LA, was there any point? I suppose it's difficult because when you're in LA, especially with you liking to travel, every day is different because especially at somewhere like a Wildcard, because it's a bit of a revolving door because you never know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was one day Duran showed up and trained there.
Duran trained there for 3 months. Duran trained there because he was getting ready for William Joppy.
Okay.
And then the card got cancelled, and he stayed there. Yeah, he was there 3 months and all, I think.
So I suppose what I was getting at was I was going to say, once you were at the Wildcard, did you think of going over to places like the Kronk or going over to Gleason's in New York and sort of extending your education beyond Los Angeles? Or was LA ticking all the boxes that you wanted to tick?
I mean, listen, anything that you'd want to, you could be in any of those gyms and you'd still get the lessons that you need out of boxing, wouldn't you, in any of those gyms? But no, I was in Freddie's. I was there a couple of years, and then I was just trying to, like you say, just move on somewhere. And then you got hold of me and says, "Will you come up here?" I went to Atlanta, Georgia for just under a year first. I spent a year down there training Josue Blocus.
Okay. I remember him from living in Atlantic City. He used to come over and spar Vlad.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
French guy was in the Olympics.
Yeah, man, and he couldn't speak hardly any English when he first come to LA. And there was chat about him going around LA, this wild fella who couldn't speak English because he had a bad temper on him. He fell out with James one day in there.
Oh, really? It's funny because I remember when I was living in Atlantic City at the time, he was there obviously sparring with Vlad, who was getting ready to fight Ray Mercer.
Okay.
And I remember queuing for this is to talk about writing home. We were queuing for the email. We'd queue at the library, Blocus and me, for the terminal so we could email people back home. And it was back when it was on dial-up, and you used to have to pay a couple of dollars at the library to go and do that. But that was a hard way for Jose to make a living over there, to go over and spar with those guys and be a long way from home. But then that's what you do, and that, I suppose to an extent you did it and I've done it, to go to America, not necessarily for fame and fortune, but to be around some of the best guys in the sport. Yeah,
he came into it. Who was Rubles? Senor Rubles used to manage him. I think he put on that Greg Haw and Chavez fight, that 100,000 odd people down.
Oh,
he
Greg
was the promoter
fight,
of that, yeah.
Okay.
And he was managing him when I first met him at Freddie's. When we were in Atlanta, we were living together in Atlanta. And he had then signed with Don King. Right. So I think he was moving in the right direction.
So what were your early impressions of Laila?
She's cool. I mean, as a person or as a fighter?
Let's go as a fighter.
As a fighter, great mentality. Great mentality. And that's the biggest thing with anyone. It didn't matter what was going on, fight night, she'd show up. She was one of those people you could have complete confidence that fight night, she'd show up. And she was, she would try and cheat on a diet, like, as often as she could. But she was also the consummate professional. I mean, she trained hard.
In the book, there's a few pictures of you and Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. Bunny ears with him to you and you to him. How was it being around Ali?
He made it easy. He wasn't one of those dudes that kind of let you know who he was. So, yeah, it was cool. And I suppose because of how I met him and that, it was easy. It wasn't like a one-time thing that you'd be around him. So then you'd kind of think, oh, can I get close? Can I have a chat? You kind of knew you'd be around him a lot, so you didn't there was nothing forced.
Did it make you think, I wish I'd been around this guy 30 years ago? And to have seen what he was like then, and to have been part, around the big fights and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but then you could always say that about everyone, couldn't you?
Yeah, but especially with him though, just because obviously it was the highest the sport's ever been. When if you could be around Ali in the 70s, there's nothing else like it, is there? Yeah. Whether it's Leonard in the 80s or whether it's Dempsey in the 20s.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it, is there?
No, I mean, those men they were kind of boxing at that time when there was a momentum. But he was it was cool when I knew him. It was cool, kind of the way I knew him in the relationship. So it was all cool.
Yeah, I went to a couple of Laila's fights. I went to a fight in Detroit when she fought on the Tyson Galotta undercard.
Okay.
And I was at the fight I was at Ali Frazier 4 up in Canastota.
Okay. Okay, so I got with her after that. After that, she had an operation and had a bone spur on her shoulder. Okay. And I think she took a year out, and then I come on after that.
Yeah, because people thought that she was going to blow Jackie away, and she didn't. It was a really tough, entertaining fight.
Don't forget, Laila had no amateur fights, none whatsoever. She just, showed up and started fighting. And there's lots of people decided to do that, but they didn't turn into a well-rounded fighter like she is. If you watch her, when people used to watch her before, they think, all right, she's a big girl and she can punch. She's got a good brain on her. She can walk you onto stuff, and going backwards, she can walk you onto shots. And she's got a good brain. She goes to the body well. She's a good fighter, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw her fighting again. Really? Mm.
Would you be training her?
I wouldn't be surprised if you saw her fighting again.
Did you want her to fight Lucia Ryker?
No. And at the time, listen, Lucia is probably the most complete female fighter. And that's even disrespectful to say. Katie Taylor would find that disrespectful too, just purely because she doesn't like female and men's boxing. It's boxing. And I get it. I get what she means. But Lucia was a complete fighter. She did some time at the wild card as well, didn't she? Oh yeah, she was with Freddie for a long time. I worked with her when I was with Freddie, and she was a complete fighter. She could box, she could punch, she could trade with you. She had good ring generalship. She would set shots up, not just be reactive. She was an excellent fighter. But Lali's a big girl. Lali's a big girl, man. She's 6 foot, 5'11", and a half, 6 foot, and big.
Both those girls were amongst the first girls on the Hall of Fame ballot this year for the first inductions for female fighters. So we'll find out in December if they've gone in.
Well, Lucia, to me, she should be having... Well, both, and look at... Lali's a 2-weight world champion, undefeated 24-0, and Lucia's probably 2-weight world champion as well. Do
you think they both do all right if they were around today?
I think Lucia would be dominant in her weights. I think she'd be dominant. The girl that reminds me most of Lucia is Katie. There's a lot... You see a lot of Lucia in Katie. But Lucia, I think, would be dominant if she was around today.
Tell me about Lamon Brewster and how much time you spent with him over the years.
Me and T still talk. He's just one of those just good individuals.
Who's in many ways been shortchanged by the sport though, isn't he?
In what way do you mean?
Well, he's a guy who put a lot into it and maybe now hasn't got as much to show for it. I
don't know. I never asked somebody what they got in their pocket, so he made money when he was there. I don't know. I never do. I could be friends with you 20 years and I wouldn't ask you what you got in your pocket. Yeah,
no, that's kind of not what I'm getting. Because he's had some health issues as well, hasn't he, with his eyes?
Yeah, he had a detached retina. I think that came after, wasn't that the Lajkovic fight?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to be with him for the Lajkovic fight, but it fell at the same time as Lali was fighting, and I was with Lali first, so that was the fight I was going to go to.
Were you around for the Klitschko fight?
For the first one, yes.
So the big shock?
If you'd have been up in Big Bear for the first 4.5 years, it was a huge shock because he was getting his ass handed to him every day. And then if you'd have been up in Big Bear for the last week and a half, it was only God himself going to beat T. He just changed. He came out of the bedroom one morning, he had completely changed. Mentally, he was just on it. And it was just, I would have bet my whole house on him that night. I put a good bit of money on him. I called when he changed and went into the gym and started checking people. I was like, because we all knew he had a ferocious punch. He had a great chin, and now his mind was right. And he was from a good school of boxing too. Don't forget Bill Slayton and that. But he mentally, when that came out and that was right, I called a professional gambler I knew in Vegas, and I said, here, look, you'll have to trust me to give you the money when I get there. Put some money on T for me. And he went, really? And I went, yeah, put this on him. And he goes, are you sure? And I was going, 100%. It's only God himself was going to beat him. So
what was it? What had changed within him?
He was really struggling mentally in camp in a bad way. There was nothing going right for him. Bill Slayton it's used a lot, isn't it? Oh, he was like a father to me or that, but Bill Slayton was like a father to him. He had known him since he was 16 years old, 17 years old. He had been with him and really close to him. And he passed away in November. So this was his first camp without Bill. And beside his bed, there was a picture of him. It was really, really hard for him. And then he just got it one night. He just got it.
Did he ever explain that to you?
Oh, we spoke nearly every night. Nearly every night I'd finish cooking. He'd eat it, and then his buddy'd come down and go, oh, T wants to talk to you. I'd go upstairs and we'd sit and talk for an hour or two every night. And we'd meditate together, and we would do anything that would try to bring some kind of change, because when you have somebody that you know can fight and you know has all the tools, but he's not using them, it has to be something mental going on. One day we were meditating, and afterwards he said, I keep seeing a load of gold around me. He said, but it's not money. He said, the color, it feels really protective. And he talked a lot about I am. He's he's not religious, he's a very spiritual dude. But if you pick up any part of the Bible, start talking about it, he'll tell you the page. He'll tell you that's in Exodus, paragraph this, da, da, da. He knows, he's somebody who studies the Bible. He don't just read it, he studies it. So I went and I got a piece of cardboard and I cut it into the shape of a shield. It's here somewhere. He gave it back to me at the second Klitschko fight. I just went over to visit him and he carried it with me to give it to me. And I covered it in gold material and I took it down to an embroider in Big Bear, the only one there. And I got him to embroider I am on it. And T loved it and he'd hang it at the end of the bed every night. And then one night at the top of the road, it was pitch black. There's only the lights off the houses. There's no street lights where we were up into the hills a bit. And it was a U-turn. It was a dead end, but you'd drive up this way and go around and come back down. And we'd be coming back from the gym every day, and at the top of the road we'd stop, and then the forest would start. And the boys would be looking in there going, there ain't no black man ever going in there, man. That's nuts. Look at that in there. And that was the conversation kind of every day coming back from the gym. And I was sat down in the house one night, and it was around midnight. And I thought, I'm going to go for a walk up there. Now, no idea why. I just thought, let me go for a walk. So I went to the top of the road, and as soon as I got there, you look and you think, it's a bit dark, man, because it's black. There's nothing. It's forest. It's in the mountains. There's no lights. I'm looking and thinking, why do I want to go for a walk there? And I'd look back at the house lights, and I thought, that looks inviting. And I looked back up, and I thought, all right, let me take a few steps in. So I walked in a few steps, and then you start hearing all the noises associated with silence. And you're like, not too sure about this. And then I just thought, go on. And I went in a bit more. And I kept creeping in a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And before you know it, I'm deep in it. And I started to get somewhat comfortable. So I sat down, and it's big skies up there. And I sat down in an opening, and I was just looking up at the big skies, and I got used to the noises that were around. I felt comfortable, and I was there for around 20 minutes, half hour on my own. And then I just thought, I got to get tea up here. So I went down, and we'd go running every day, and because I was the fastest runner and he was the slowest, I'd carry a pistol and he'd carry a pistol just to keep us safe when we were out, because of the season it was when we were up there. So I knew that if I'd said to him, come on up there, first thing he'd done is put a pistol in his pocket. So I went down, I went upstairs. I knew he wouldn't be sleeping. He won't go to sleep till around 4 in the morning. And knocked his door. I says, T, come on, come for a walk with me. And he goes, where are we going for a walk? I said, up top of the road. And he went, I ain't going up there, you big dummy. He said, there ain't no black man ever going inside in that thing. I goes, come with me, leave your pistol and come with me. So he went, okay. So he came with me. We left the house and didn't speak a word. We just walked up, walked in. He just started walking alongside me. We didn't speak. I went back to the clearing that I found. We sat down for, I don't know how long it was. It felt like 10, 15 minutes. And then his friend had come up a week before, a martial artist that he'd known for a long time, and was doing some Tai Chi with him. I had no idea what I was doing. But for some reason I stood up and I started doing the Tai Chi. No idea what I'm up to now. So then he stood up and started doing it with me. So now the two of us are doing this Tai Chi for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And then we just stopped and walked back to the house. Didn't speak again to each other. Got back to the house and I goes, all right, T, peace, see you in the morning. And that was it. He went to bed. And the next morning he came out and done the big drum roll. We were sat downstairs. The boys were playing their Nintendos and the thing, and I was just sat down. And he came out of his bedroom and he was like, the champ is here. And he started screaming, and then he done it again. The champ was here, and his mindset was changed. I got on the phone, put some money on him.
Have you got any good grizzly bear stories?
No, I ain't. We saw Prince, and that was enough.
So at what point did you come back from LA and Vegas?
When DJ was born. DJ was 16 last week. When he was born, after around a year, me and my wife thought we don't want to raise him going through metal detectors to go to school. So I moved to Germany for a year. And then after, I worked with some fighters out there, and just Germany wasn't gelling with my wife. So I decided to move back here.
And who did you, what gyms did you go to at the start when you came back?
Back here?
Yep.
I just came back and was going to just open up my own gym. And I spoke to a few people up in London, and they were like, why are you going to Swindon? Where is Swindon? I'm like, it's like an hour down the M4. And they went, what the hell are you doing? There ain't no boxing down there. You've got to move up here. And I said, no, I want to start my own gym. I didn't leave Vegas to come then and live in London. What's the point? So I said, I'm going to go down here. I already had connections here. I've been here since '86. And every man, his dog said, you're stupid opening up a gym back there. Why are you going to open a gym? You're not going to get anyone. There's no pros back there. And I said, well, if the coaching is good enough, eventually the pros will come. And the first year I was open, I opened in the September. I started training Jamie Cox in the Novemberish time. Jamie was with me for 10 fights, and then I worked with Robert Lloyd for a few, and then it just kind of built from there.
Was there a crossover with Robert Lloyd? Was that the link to Adam Booth?
No, the link to Adam was I came back to get some paperwork sorted for the States in 99. I think it was 99, and I met Adam because I got do you know Mark Reigate from...
Yeah. From the Lodge.
Yeah. So I got to know Mark when I came back, and he said, do you want to come down and do a bit of training with me? So I went down to the Lodge, and I was working with Mark, doing some mitts and all that. And then Mick Carney, he came over to me and him started chatting. And he says, will you do me a favour, do some mitts with that fella in the ring? And it was David. So I was done some mitts with David for a few weeks, and just got to know David that way. And then when I came back, I forget how me and David started chatting. And then he said, oh, I'm going to be down in Reading, I think it was, on next Saturday or something. If you fancy catching up, come down. And I went along and I met Adam then.
Right, okay. And then tell me about your first meeting with George Groves. That would have been when he was being trained by Adam? Yeah,
most definitely, yeah. The first time I saw George, well, when George was still an amateur, Adam told me, he said, I'm thinking about signing this dude to the pros. He said his name's George Groves, man. He said he can punch. He's got the right tools, and he signed George. And the first time I kind of met George would have been, I had Duke in the amateurs, and he was fighting on some amateur show up in Birmingham, and the dude he was fighting knew Adam. Adam was there that night, and me and Adam just was chatting, and he said, I might be signing 2 fights tonight. He said, one of them is David against Klitschko, and the other one is George against the Gale. He said, what do you think? And I said, I hope it's Vladimir, because I just thought Vitaly would have been a tear up. So I said, I hope it's Vladimir. And he said, what do you think about George and the Gale? I said, I think George beats him so long as he doesn't get emotionally attached. I don't know what he's like. And then and he goes, he said, I'll give you a call next week for a chat. And he called me next week, and we just had a chat about the fight, and that was the first fight I kind of done anything with George with. And my only input into that fight was, I think he needs to fight him like Barrera against Nazim, counterpuncher. But if and when the Gale starts to move away from you, don't close the gap, because he's just trying to walk you onto the blender. He's moving away to bring you onto something. So just as soon as he pulls away from you, double the distance between you and him. So if it's 6 inches, make it 12, and just keep cutting the ring off, but not getting any closer to him. So he feels that he keeps getting trapped no matter which way he goes, but that you're not close enough for him to walk you onto that blender. And that happened in round 8 and round 12.
When George hired you as a coach, he'd obviously split with Adam. Mm-hmm. For many, that was their first introduction to you in boxing, wasn't it?
I suppose so, yeah.
So despite your background, I mean, we're nearly an hour into the podcast now, right. And obviously now this is, for many people, this is where your story will begin.
Okay.
I suppose that's one of the things, until you prove yourself in boxing, you're either a nobody or a fraud or a con artist, I suppose, because you need that track record. But obviously you had a track record going into the Groves fight. I suppose going into Groves, I suppose that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Do you agree?
I was involved in whatever I was involved in up to that point.
But it doesn't. But for you, obviously, I suppose what I'm getting at is it doesn't feel to you like you've come out of nowhere to coach George Groves, did it?
No, because I've been a full-time pro coach since '97.
How did you feel you were perceived when you were first unveiled as George's coach?
I told George to make sure that we're perceived that he's on his own, because Adam had decided not to work with George anymore, and there was the sense in the Sky reports and all that George is going to be lost. So the first day that he came down and asked me would I work with him, I said okay. And well, he said 2 questions. Do you think I can beat Carl Froch? And if you do, will you train me for it? So I said yes, I think you can, and this is I think how you need to go about it. And second, yeah, I'll train you for it. And then the first day he came down to do some training with me, he said Sky and that wants to come down and do some filming. And I said, okay. I said, well, when they get here, just say that you're down here doing bits and pieces and I'm just helping you out because you haven't got a gym to go to. And he says, well, why are we going to do that? I said, why not? Everyone thinks you're lost, so let's play on that perception.
And then really for both Froch fights, mind games were at the epicenter of everything, weren't they?
Yeah, and I think mind games are a huge thing. I mean, you look at Ali, you look at Mayweather, you look at Hopkins, you look at Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard, yeah, but they all did it in different ways. Look at Sugar Ray Leonard having a press conference to say he's retiring when Hagler thought it was
and inviting Hagler
to announce they're going to be fighting. And you look at saying no, it's not 15 rounds, it's 12 rounds. You look at Mayweather, the way he plays the mind games. Look at Hopkins, he's superb at it. So yeah, there's when you say mind games, some people think, hey, listen, enough of that shit. That's not important. We need to focus on the fight, the preparation and that. That is the fight. That is the preparation. Part of it, a huge part of it, and I don't think it can be ignored. Sometimes it doesn't work second time round. Do you understand me? Because people have cottoned on and went, oh, okay, I fell for that or whatever else. And they look at Vladimir after Brewster. His own brother said, maybe you shouldn't be doing this no more. So his right-hand man who would have had his back from they first put gloves on together was going, maybe the same for you. So he had to go to a real lonely place in order to mentally think, no, I gotta do something here. And when he improved there, he improved all the time, didn't he? The mental games didn't get him no more.
Do you think Froch overlooked Groves in the first fight?
I'd have to say in some shape or form, yes, because it's not enough to physically tick all the boxes that you would normally tick if mentally you think the threat isn't as big as you're normally up against. Because then ticking all the physical boxes can actually end up being a detriment, because you think, okay, I'm a multiple world champion already. I fought all these excellent fighters, beaten them. Now I'm fighting a guy that I don't think is ready yet. And I still done all my runs, training, everything as good as I always have. You almost then are going to deliberately not realize, but you've dialed yourself down because you don't need to be as heightened. First of all, you weren't as concerned about the guy you're facing, and you've done everything physical that you needed to do. So that makes that even easier. And I think that's what happened against the Badu Jack fight, and I think it happened with Carl against George in the first fight.
George said very publicly he was going to walk out and crack Carl with the right hand. And was that something that you guys had discussed? Because that's what happened.
Yeah, when I first brought it up, I was wrapping George's hands in Dale Youth. And it was around a week before fight week. So it was 2 weeks for the fight. And I knew I wanted him to do it from early on, but it was what time do I bring it up to him? And I thought if I brought it up too soon, it would have been playing on his mind like, am I with the right dude here? What's going on? And I just wanted him to focus on being ready for the fight in the technical aspects. Then, like I said, the last kind of week of training, I said to him, hey, I said, let's tell Carl what we're going to do in the first round. And he was like, George gets this little red flush. And he said, why would we do that? I said, because he can't do a thing about it. You're always going to have better feet than him. You're always going to have a better jab than him. And you're quicker than him. He doesn't win the first round ever against you, no matter how many times you fight. So why not tell him, we're going to go out there, keep it simple, use nothing but the jab, and then we're going to hit you with one right hand. Now, he hit him with far more in the end, but we're going to hit you with that one right hand, just one right hand, just to let you know. And I thought it was so easy a thing to do that if you do it, at the end of the first round, think about Hopkins against, I think it was against Pavlik, when he said, oh yeah, you're gonna win the first 6 rounds. He said, you're too young, you're too fresh, you're too quick. He said, you're gonna win the round 1, round 2, round 10. He keeps talking. You see Pavlik thinking, I'm gonna win this whole thing. And he said, in round 6, I'm gonna touch you. And he said, after I touch you, then you're gonna know where I touched you, I can hit you. He said, and then I'm gonna start hitting you, and then I'm gonna turn it. And you see at the end of round 6, he says something to him at the end, and Pavlik kind of, and it was like, oh, he's reminded him. So while he was winning those early rounds, he's not thinking about what Hopkins said. He's just confident that, look, I'm winning these rounds. But then Hopkins knew, I'm going to lose those rounds anyway. Chances are, I'm going to lose those anyway. So how can I weaken him in the second half? So as soon as then he goes, I touched you. Now he's like, oh God, what did he, everything he's told me up to now is the truth. I won those first 6 rounds. He told me that. He told me the truth. And then he told me the next 6 rounds, this is going to happen. There has to be part of your head that starts to agree with that. So I thought we pull this first round off. Then he's got to start believing everything that George said to him.
So Froch went down hard in that first round, and he said subsequently that he was fighting in a fog for several rounds thereafter. Was there a point in the fight where you thought that, not that it was over, but Froch was gone? And
no, never. I wouldn't be that ignorant. No. The only time you should ever have a game plan about knocking a dude out is if you know there's a vulnerability. Let's say Andrew Galata. You look at people who started quick on him. They kind of shocked him. They got him early, shocked him, and mentally he was somebody who would get into a fight after 4 or 5 rounds. Yeah. But if all of a sudden he gets nailed early like T and like Lennox and that did him, he's like, what the hell? And you got him. So if you know something about a man like that, then you test those vulnerabilities early because they're vulnerabilities that's been proven. But when you have a man like Carl Froch, who you could argue that he lost every round against Taylor, Jermaine Taylor, and then who comes out with just as much belief and ferocity in the 12th and goes and stops him. You have somebody like Chavez, who at the end of every round he loses against Taylor, still goes back as if he won it, completely confident that, I know, I lost that one, I'll get the next one. You'd be ignorant to think that, yeah, we're going to get this dude out of here. Yeah. You'd be delighted. You celebrate that type of thing after it happens. You don't expect it to happen.
Then came the stoppage from Howard Foster, one of the most controversial stoppages in modern boxing history.
Right.
Certainly modern British boxing history. There's pictures of you obviously remonstrating with Howard, but obviously by then the horse is out of the barn, his decision's made up.
Yeah.
How disappointed were you with the stoppage?
Right, let's separate the two. The reason why I was so angry on the night is because I sat in the rules meeting the day before, and there was me, Joe Gallagher was there with, it might have been, I don't know who he had on that show, but Joe Gallagher was there, sat beside me. I'm sat here, I had Neil Sibley with me, and of course the border controller over there. And they came to any questions, you know, because they read out the rules and any questions. And I said, yes. I said, I want to bring up about what's been in the media for the last 9.5 weeks. And they said, what, Paddy? Carl Froch's chin made of iron, and George Grove's got a glass chin. I said, listen, Paddy, we're professionals. We know what we're doing. I said, okay, I get it. I said, but for 9.5 weeks, he's had a glass chin. He's had a chin made of iron. You can't help but that be somewhere in your psyche. I said, and I'm asking you men, please do not buy into what's been written in the media. I'm asking you, please. And they were, yeah, Paddy, relax. And I'm going, listen, it's a big deal. I wouldn't have brought it up. This isn't a fight to get into the big fight. This is the big fight. This is for 2 world titles. Both of these men deserve to be in there equally. I said, and I just want to make sure that you fully understand that. And it was kind of played down. It's like, yes, yes, yes. So when it happened, I just thought, you know, was George hurt? Yes. You can see it. You can see in the playback better than you can see on fight night even. You can see, yeah, he got hurt. But damn, Carl had been hurt worse in the first round. But he had an iron chin. And then the day after the fight, to find out that Howard had liked the comment, which, you know, is a mental agreement, isn't it? You like a comment that Carl is going to knock out George in the 9th round. Well, that was how we won the appeal, by proving that you cannot make a decision to bring your hand with a mouse or bring it over and go, I like that comment, if you don't agree with it. You agree with it. So then there has to be a part of your psyche that when you hear the bell for round 9, you're just heightened alert. No way do I mean that Howard Foster deliberately stopped that in any way or was unprofessional. It's the fact that he liked that comment. Round 9 happens, your brain goes, round 9, this is it. Now he's paying attention. George gets nailed with that shot and he stopped him. Would he have got stopped later on? We don't know. Should he have been allowed to go on a bit further? I think so, yeah.
How clear was George straight after in the moments afterwards? Because you were obviously up there in the ring. Was he clear straight away?
He was clear pretty much straight away, but I mean, yeah, he was. He was.
Then came the rematch, obviously, which was huge. And it was obviously the biggest fight in this country for years. Obviously, 90,000 is Carl, or was it 80,000? I think I might have got that wrong.
You've added on another two.
I've done Carl a bonus there of 10,000. The rematch, Froch set his stall out different psychologically for the rematch, didn't he?
Yeah.
He obviously had, I think it's Chris Marshall from Team GB as a sports psychologist on board. How did you see things differently, and did you see Froch was more resolute psychologically for the rematch?
Did I see it? Not necessarily, because you wouldn't necessarily see it in the lead up to the fight, you know, because you're just seeing him in the press conferences every now and again.
There were a couple of things, though, weren't there? He shoved George in the pitch at Wembley.
I think George got more shocked in the lead-ups. There's 2 times where I think George got caught off guard, and one was when he got shoved on the pitch.
And the other one was the pull and push.
Yes, and the second that he got shoved on the pitch, there was a split second of shock on his face. And then he played it down, but it didn't matter. He got shocked. And again, they're little mental things. They don't change anything overall, but Carl was different. Yeah.
Yeah. Froch even came out at you, didn't he? He was calling you Gavin.
Yeah, yeah.
He was calling you Paddy Ritz Cracker.
Yeah.
Any of that bother you, or did you like it?
I've been called a lot worse than that, man. I've been called worse than that by George.
So I mentioned obviously the Froch, the 2 things which obviously you've picked up on there. That night at Wembley, did that fight show us how thin the margins are between success and lack of success in this sport? Was it one false move?
Yes. I mean, listen. Well, one false move. When we were training for the rematch, I had elastic band from here to there across the ring, in this ring, to make the ring 2 foot smaller inside, so that you could feel the elastics when you come up against it, and if in hard spar you could push through that and move on, but that you could feel, I'm coming close to the ropes, I should be moving now.
Sure.
So for 4 rounds when he was playing it beautifully, because the whole idea was for the first 6 to 8 rounds to box him. But at round 5, George skirted up along the ropes, and I was close to the bell when it happened, and he caught most of the shots on his arms and that. But as he walked back to the corner and he kind of gave me a smile, I said, no good. And he said, what do you mean no good? I said, we've lost that round. He goes, he didn't land on me. I said, it don't matter. We spent 6 months in the middle of the ring, not for you to go up along the ropes. Get back into the center of the ring, get back to what you were doing, and then we'll start picking it up. And then at the end of round 7, I said, okay, let's start nudging him back now. I said, don't walk into the fire, but start adding that right hand behind those double jabs now and start nudging him back. I said, and then we'll take it from there. And then he skirted up against the ropes again. I mean, but listen, you look at Roberto Duran. He got a chin like granite. He was still iced in 2 rounds by Tommy Hearns. I mean, and you have somebody like Carl. You know, you got to know that anything can happen a second before the bell, because that's the type of man you're dealing with. So I think he was boxing beautifully, and that's what happens. That's the game we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, George then beat Rabras and Dennis Douglin. You worked with him for both, and then came Badou Jack. Now, reading through the book, obviously, it's around this time where you start to talk about there being cracks in the relationship, or whether it was minor disagreements. It didn't seem to be a smooth time. You guys didn't seem to be on the same page.
No, I don't. But only on one or two things. Only on one or two things, but just enough for me to think, okay, there's a bit of a shift here. But I was still getting what I was asking from the gym. Listen, if you look at the Rabrasi fight and the pressure that dude was on, and he wanted to go to the Wembley Centre.
Yeah, because
he wanted to go there.
The site of the knockout. Yeah,
he wanted to go there. He did not want the gimme fight. Now you look also how close Rabras pushed Callum Smith a couple of fights after. Rabrasi was a world level fighter. He was a European champion and proven, and he was a world level fighter because Callum Smith is the best dude out there at super middle. And George came out, don't forget, after getting knocked out half a mile across the road, and he had a bad camp, that camp. His weight was not good, but you watch him do the ring walk for that Rabras fight, bold as brass, you'd swear he was still undefeated. I mean, you got to admire that about a dude. And then the Douglin fight, I drew a thing in here that looked like a seashell. So, and I called it Panksy instead of Banksy. So, and we had it there, and it was just that when you were moving to your left behind your jab, that you slightly get in a little bit closer as you work your way around to the left to nullify and to bully a southpaw onto his back leg. I said, but don't do this. We worked on it, and I said, don't do it until the second round. I said, make sure you get your jab going first. He said, Coach, you don't need to tell me that. He said, I'm always going to get my jab going first. I went, okay, no problem. Bell went, and 15 seconds in, he starts to move over to the left and gets nailed with a right hook. And it was like, you don't have to worry about that. Well, shit, I did, because you just walked over and got in with it. So the second the thing was stopped, as he walks towards me in the ring, he said, what do you think? I said, 5 out of 10. And he went, ah. So he sat down, and in the interview, they asked, what do you think? And he goes, well, Paddy thinks 5 out of 10. He says, he's probably right, and da-da-da, and that was it. And the first day back in the gym or whatever, he said, maybe next time after a fight, don't score me in the ring. Wait till we finish and we get out. I said, why was that? And he goes, well, you told me 5 out of 10, and I said it in an interview. I said, yeah, I said 5 out of 10 because it was 5 out of 10. I said, I told you, do not go over to the left until you get that jab established. You told me you don't have to tell me that. And then you did it 15 seconds in. And then because of that, you were messy for a few rounds until you got in your groove. I said, it was 5 out of 10. So why wouldn't I say it? So that was kind of the first little bit.
And then going into the Badou Jack, I mean, just give us some background about what was going on into that build-up.
The relationship wasn't necessarily, like I said, there was no gaping holes in it. I mean, everything I was asking for in camp, he was given for me. He was giving the father everything he needed in conditioning. He was giving Dan everything in strength. They all recorded personal bests off him. It was the first camp where everyone in sparring felt George in there. So he was in a great place for it. So there was no big gaping holes in that, but there was enough things popped up that I thought, I've had my enjoyment now as far as this is concerned. There probably won't be another fight after this. But that only happened around a month before fight time. So
was there a who split with who, or was it a mutual thing, or was it just you left it after the Badou Jack fight?
After the Badou Jack fight, I text him. I text him and says, "Listen, I think we've gone as far as we're going together. I wish you all the best."
How did you feel the night he won the world title?
I was happy for him.
Did you reach out to him?
I sent him a congratulatory text.
Did you hear back?
Not a thing.
How sad were you that you weren't in the corner for the Tudor fight, given everything that you'd been through in that period of time?
No, it wasn't sad at all. This is a boxing business. You work with fighters 1 minute and you're not the next minute.
Did you feel like you were a scapegoat for him never winning a title because you didn't get a title with him and then he won one without you? Did you feel that it was easy to blame you, and did you feel that anyone did blame you, be it George or fans or anything else?
Well, George blamed Howard for the first one, the boxing gods for the second one, and me for the third one. But that's okay. I get it too. I get his mentality. How could he keep going after 3 if it was his fault? And it's not anything got to do with fault. It's just a fight game. You've had lots of fighters that didn't do it the first day. Bruno did it in the 4th go as well. I mean, but what I'm saying is, as a fighter, and you're still a confident fighter, there's got to be a reason then why it went wrong.
Did you question yourself?
No. I question myself too much every day with everything I'm doing to question myself afterwards. I question myself when I make a comment that hurts somebody's feelings, or I do something and I think, oh shit, why did I do that? But I wouldn't question myself about my coaching because I overthink everything before I do it in coaching, because I want to think, okay, a fight can be played 3 ways: going forward, him coming to you, or 2 you stood still. So there's already needs to be 3 game plans. So if we do this, what could happen there? Like when I said to George about telling Carol what's going to happen in the first round, I went through that every night in my head for 8 weeks before I told him, or 7 weeks before I told him with 2 weeks to go. So I don't question it afterwards.
Were you behind the Rubik's Cube, by the way?
No.
Okay.
No, right. I just saw him pull that out and I went, God damn, what's he up to now? And,
okay.
And then the fact he pulled it off, I was like, fair play, dude.
What makes a good coach?
What makes a good coach? Freddie taught me direction is better than hype. So, you know, you got a minute in between rounds to give a dude direction. Don't waste it hyping him. But then also on the other side,
you gave some examples of people hyping him up.
Of somebody just saying, you know, so I get what he was saying.
Know which one's which and when to use. What time to do what. Yeah.
But also, a good coach, you should, if you're showing somebody something, it should be, here's how to do it, here's when you do it, and here's why you do it. Everything you teach should have a how, when, and why.
Which coaches do you admire and have you admired over the years?
Oh, God. Well, Freddie, completely. Adam Booth. Buddy. And I took a lot from Roger, but me and Roger would have good conversations when I put Roger on a pedestal.
You're talking about Roger Mayweather?
Yeah. I'd pick one of his fights and say, Roger, when you did something, oh, let me tell you. And then he'd tell you about it and you're getting all the information. But he wasn't necessarily good at passing on information. Buddy was very much, it's all about you, it's never about the other dude. He said, he's going to do what he's going to do anyway. Yeah. It's what you do when he does it. So I think that you'd be, and Adam is so obsessed. You know, he's probably the best manager I've definitely ever been around. And as a coach, he's obsessed too. He thinks of every single aspect. So, you know, if you're around those type of men and you don't pick up stuff, you think you know too much already.
When we came in, you had some historic fights up on the TV. If you could have coached anyone through history, who would it have been? I'm not letting you pick Muhammad Ali either.
Well, I was lucky enough to work with James Toney, so let's go with him. He's an all-time great.
Okay, fair enough. Are you conflicted about, or have you been conflicted about coaching people in this sport in which they get damaged and their futures, long or short term, can be compromised with bad health?
I've had guys come to me and ask me to coach them. They want to turn pro, and I've said, no, I'm not. I don't think you're ready. I won't do it. I don't want to take somebody into the pro game if they don't understand and if they can't convince me, number one, that they believe what they're saying, And then obviously I've got to believe that they have the ability to carry out what they're saying. If somebody wants to get into this game because it's like, listen, I want to earn some money and I'll fight anyone and I'll go on the road and I'm a journeyman, I got absolutely complete respect for them. And especially because they understand where they're at and they're just men that don't have that fear of fighting people and they want to go out and earn the money. But if you're working with somebody and they're like, I want to be able to do this, this and this, and you're looking at them thinking, no, that's not in you, then how could you coach somebody if you don't believe that they can get to where they're going to go?
Are you, with hindsight now, are you fussed about your own pro career and how it went, and do you wish you'd been in a different place?
Oh, shit, listen.
No, but I mean,
if you couldn't look back, if you were me and you couldn't look back and think, oh, I would have liked that got a bit differently. No,
but do you know what I mean? Is it the sort of thing that you know, are you pissed off about it?
No,
that things didn't...
I'm not, listen, pissed off. I ain't got time to be pissed off about shit that didn't go right. I'm just trying to do every day a little bit better. The only thing about any of the pros that didn't sit well with me is the fact that I quit in that
last one.
Yeah, but that's about the only thing. The rest of it, shit, it's life.
What's been the absolute high point, the highlight of the boxing journey?
Don't have an absolute highlight of the boxing journey. No, because I've been blessed enough to be around a lot of accomplished fighters and trainers. So there isn't any of the boxing ones that stand out to me. I suppose one of the ones that I'm a huge admirer of Brendan Ingle. Never had the chance to meet him. Gutted, because when I first started with Freddie was like, as soon as we get a bit of a quiet weekend, I'll take you up to Vegas to meet Eddie Futch. He says, you're going to love him. And we never got the chance to, because he was just too busy, and then he passed away. And I remember thinking, I was a huge admirer of Brendan Ingle's. I thought, I want to go see him, spend time with him, talk to him, listen to him. And I bumped into Johnny Nelson up at a fundraiser for the Grenfell Towers. And I said to Johnny, I goes, listen, I'd love to get up and talk to Brendan. I said, would you have a word? You know, I know I can just arrive up, but I want to be able to, if he's okay with it, and me sit down and chat with him. And he goes, yeah, no problem. So he called me back a week later. So I said, listen, they said that's cool. Whenever you want he knows that you want to have a chat with him, that's cool. And got too busy and never did. So, but one of the reasons why I admired him so much is because it was never just about boxing with him. It was about his youth. And also, lots of coaches have coached world champions. He made and built them from scratch. When I say made them, he was there every bit of the journey from they first put gloves on, through the amateurs, through that. That's a huge achievement. Like Kevin Cunningham with Corey Spinks in that, and with Kevin Cunningham with Alexander Devon. You know, he had them from scratch. And that to me was something I wanted to do, take somebody from scratch. So Duke has been with me from scratch. And we went through to the Irish and the Commonwealth, and he still has got more to do, but I'm no longer in the boxing, in the pros. But that's, I suppose, that's a kind of, I suppose that's a special moment, just because the relationship and everything.
What's the long-term plan now then?
A school for the youth. I want to have a school here.
A boxing school? Or...
I want the kids to be able to come here and do 5 GCSEs, the same way there would as regular school. I want the boxing to be a hook for them. But there's lots of kids that are labelled as being disruptive or labelled as being,
problem,
bad eggs.
Yeah.
And they just ain't dudes that learn the way that the education system is set up to teach them.
But you're not completely done with pro boxing.
Yeah.
What if Laila calls?
Listen, me and Lally are very close and we still talk. regularly, and if she ever needed me, I'd be here.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Paddy, thank you very much for having us over. I've really enjoyed it.
Good, appreciate that. Glad you did.
Thank you.
All right, man. Peace. Come on.